Welcome back to another episode of the Meaningful People podcast. We sit down in this episode with the one and only Rabbi Efrem Goldberg, the Rav of RBS. What's RBS stand for?
Ramat Beit Shemesh. It does stand for that.
It does. What else does it stand for?
I know Boca's, is Boca in there?
I think I messed up the initials.
Did you?
Boca Raton, BRS maybe? Boca Raton Synagogue?
Yeah, that makes way more sense.
So he's not from Ramat Beit Shemesh,
Nope,
but he
not at
is
all.
the Rav of Boca Raton Synagogue, one of the youngest, fastest growing Jewish communities in the entire world.
Yeah, and it's easy to see why he's such a popular person. But more than that, I've heard a little about him just from online. He's all over the internet, whether it's shirim, videos, Zoom, articles. He's everywhere.
As Yaakov put it after our conversation with Rabbi Efrem Goldberg, he is wired. He's very focused and driven on his goals. And I think you'll hear a lot about that and learn a lot from him in this episode. Once again, a shout out to our friends at AMR Pharmacy. AMR, please send us some backup. Yaakov's got a little cold on our hands over here.
True. It's not COVID.
Not
just
COVID, just a cold. But AMR, if you're seeing this, our boys from AMR, please hook us up.
And we want to give a thank you to dailygiving.org.
And
also.
all those who have given already to Daily Giving.
Oh my
so
gosh.
many people
Really
have
cool.
signed up at dailygiving.org. You should be next.
Welcome to the Meaningful People podcast, the podcast where we talk to people who are...
Meaningful.
Yeah, that sounds good. We're here with Rabbi Efrem Goldberg, and not Ephraim Goldberg. You go by Rabbi Efrem Goldberg.
I go by Efrem. That's the name my parents gave me. Except when I'm called to the Torah, then I'm Ephraim. Ephraim
Oh,
Chaim.
Efrem is from Ephraim.
Ephraim's from Ephraim. Yeah.
What did you think?
I thought Efrem was a name.
Oh, you thought his name was like Chesky and he went with Efrem?
There's very few Ephrems in the world, but if you think about it, there's Shmuel, Samuel, Avram, Abraham, Yitzchak, Isaac, and Ephraim, Ephraim. It just, that one didn't really catch on widely, but it did for my parents. But I'm grateful because the last name Goldberg, like Rabbi Goldberg, you can't get more cliche than that in the whole world. So at least Ephraim gives me some character.
Right. It makes you stand out a little.
A little bit.
So the name Efrem, to me, sounds maybe a little on the modern side. Did you have more of a modern like upbringing?
Probably more of a modern. I grew up in Teaneck, New Jersey. Went to Yavin Academy, went to Frisch. I was Rav Judah's older brother in school. I know he was on Judah Michelle.
And you said Rabbi Center.
Rabbi Center I knew from Teaneck growing up, although he was more of an outlier in the Teaneck scene. So I had more of a modern background in that sense, but from family, it was from upbringing. My parents, very inspiring people who continue to inspire me. But I went to modern Orthodox co-ed schools, and in fact, it was in 11th grade that I actually had a life-changing experience. We were on a class trip to Boston. It wasn't life-changing because we were in Boston. I'm a New York Yankees fan all the way, and I'll never say anything nice about Boston. But on the way back, our bus had pulled over, and there were chaperones with us. I don't know what they were doing. It was the middle of the night. Maybe they were asleep, and a lot of the kids, my friends, got off the bus, and they hit this non-kosher place at the rest stop. They didn't hit it for Diet Coke and a coffee. They were getting much more than that. When they came back on the bus, even though I was a modern kid with that background, and let's just say I didn't make mincha every day, but they got back on the bus. I was like, "What are you doing?" Like, we don't do that. That's a line we don't cross. We don't eat that. Today in day and age, the rebellious, that's nothing of a line. But back then, that was a line that was crossed. And we spent the remainder of the bus ride, it could be a good 2 hours, the back of the bus, me against the whole bus. Not intentionally, not positioned that way on purpose, but basically debating them. And they called me out in a way that changed my life. They're like, look, we all pick and choose. You pick and choose. Who are you to reject what we're picking and choosing when you yourself pick and choose? So either take it for real and do everything, or if you pick and choose, then you're not in a position to judge anyone else who does. And I came home that night, I couldn't sleep, and the next day I just got all these books, and I just started reading, and I started exploring my Judaism, taking it a lot more seriously. And I ended up that next summer going to Marsha Kollel. I ended up from there going to Karen Biavna for 2 years, and YU and Rav Shechter and to Rabbanas. And I really, that set me on a trajectory of looking in the mirror and saying to myself exactly that question, which is I think a question that everyone from any world can ask themselves, which is this real, is it not real? Is there a Ribono Shel Olam? Does he have expectations of me? Am I accountable to him? Is he good to me? What is this world really all about? Why am I here? What am I meant to be doing? So either we take it casually and flippantly, and we therefore negotiate and we leave things out, we pick and choose, Jewish life is a shmorg, or we take it seriously and we say that living a life as a Ben Torah is a serious endeavor, it's a serious opportunity, it's a serious obligation. And that conversation on that bus ride changed my life.
It's a big decision for an 11th grader to make.
It was. The fact that I challenged them was probably instinctual, was on a whim. The fact that they responded by actually challenging me back. It's very interesting. If you look at, so much for not getting so personal, but if you look at my yearbook from 12th grade, you'll see that a lot of these friends kind of wrote stuff that said, I know it's been a rough year and a half since that trip, and we've debated, and you've looked at us, and we've looked at you, or the direction you've gone, but it's still been great growing up together and know you, and so on and so forth. And then what happened was, fast forward a couple of years, and into the first year in Israel, and certainly by the second year in Israel, some of these kids were exploring themselves, asking themselves the same questions, coming to the same conclusions, and then we sort of reunited, and we had a shared passion for this new Jewish life. Now, we'd grown up with it, and my parents were wonderful role models. My grandparents, it's not any fault of their own, but much of our education then, and I think even now, lacks the fire and the passion and doesn't really hold up that mirror to ourselves and ask that question. I think even now, people are more afraid because we're afraid what the answer the other side will give if we force that question. So it's a question sometimes we have to come to for ourselves. I was fortunate enough to do it in 11th grade, and it changed the trajectory of my life.
Do you ever think back to those questions, or you're already on the pathway and you're good to go?
No, now I'm on the path. I'm good to go. Now, not to say that I don't have questions, I don't have struggles, not to say when I get upstairs, I don't have a few things I'd like to talk to the Eibishter about, particularly people who I love, who've suffered and who are gone, and that just break you and you want to understand. But we're not the first. And Moshe also said, show me how most people, Avram Avinu and Moshe Rabbeinu, and we have a long list of those who come before us who had their questions. It's okay to have those questions. But in terms of Emunah Shailas and in terms of where I am with Yiddishkeit, 11th grade, it's in the rearview mirror.
In Boston plays a huge part in your life, I imagine.
The way back from Boston, leaving Boston.
So Red Sox, David Ortiz, it's a soft spot for you, right?
It is a soft spot. That was rough. It was a blooper in center field. Yeah, let's not talk about it.
So from then until, I guess, now, you have a extremely large kehila. I don't know the number. What's the number like?
We have about 850 families, 900 families.
Wow. So between that bus ride and now, what happened? You knew you wanted to be a Rav, or
No, I thought I was going to be, at one point I thought I was going to be a doctor, then I really thought I was going to be a lawyer. My father's been in business, my father was an executive of a public company, and I thought I was in that direction. I have a real itch for that. I love that. Even today, I read productivity books and I study business. I spent the summer at an advanced executive program at Northwestern School of Management called Kellogg, which was the #1 business school at one time. The dean emeritus of the school was a member of our shul and invited me to come, which is a fascinating story we could talk about it, but we spent the whole summer there. So I have a huge itch. I've just channeled that in Rabbanos, and our shul is such, and I see Rabbanos as not only teaching Torah and counseling and being there for people, but bringing sort of a CEO mentality and having that ambition, that drive, the metrics, measuring what we're doing, trying to think strategically, marketing, branding, all that terminology and all that language we bring as a team to what we do. And I think it's largely responsible for everyone in the community understanding who we are and for wanting to join it and wanting to be part of it. So what happened was I went to Karen Biavna for 2 years, amazing 2 years, phenomenal chevra I formed there, really formidable years of my life. I came back, went to YU, I was on Rav Shech this year. And even then, I thought I was on a track for business. And what happened was I came back to Teaneck and I started getting involved in the youth and the teen programs, starting a base medrash Friday night at the shul with some cholent and kugel, Alam Zel of Hashem, delicious kugel, and the cold Teaneck nights, and some other things. I was Rabbi David Kamenetsky, Zichron Levracha's assistant in the teen minyan in Teaneck, and I got some experience of trying to mentor and trying to inspire people, and it lit something up inside me. It felt good. And it was more satisfying and fulfilling than anything academically, than anything materially. And I really loved it. And I said, I want to do this. So I went for smicha, got married, and finished smicha in Israel, went to the Grus Kollel, learned there. And when coming out, I wanted to continue learning. I wasn't ready to go full-time yet. So I looked around and was considering different kollel, community kollel models. Boca Raton had a community kollel at the time. And decided I'd never heard of Boca. Nobody had heard of Boca. It really wasn't very much on the map yet. In fact, the community kollel was there because it was a cohort, it was a nugget of young guys who had a Shalom Zachar knew how to start a nigun, who on Simchas Torah could lead a dance. There just wasn't even that there in the community at the time. So there's an opportunity to continue learning, get my feet wet, figure out what I want to do in Jewish communal life. I thought I was going to be in chinuch. I actually taught in that first year in the local high school in the community in Boca Raton. I thought chinuch all the way. And I 100% credit my wife, my Eza Kenegdo. Our wives always know better. She said, chinuch, Rabbanos, that's where you belong. And I give her 100% credit. And I went right early on. And I said to my predecessor and the assistant rabbi at the time, Rabbi Brander, Rabbi Fast, I said, anything Rabbanos-wise, I want in. You're doing a Gerus, I want to be the third on the Beis Din. You need someone to fill in, speak between Mincha and Marav, it's me. Whatever you need, I want in. And I really got shimush. I got to learn, and I loved it. And 2.5 years later, I was in the Kol 2.5 years. Rabbi Fast went to go start Nefesh B'Nefesh, which started in Boca, and I became the assistant rabbi. And fast forward after that, a few years, Rabbi Brander came up to New York, and I became the rabbi, and it's been an amazing time ever since.
Do you see yourself staying there for the rest of your life, or are you going to also go to New York? Or
The only place I want to go from there is Eretz Yisrael. My heart, every single day. My siblings all live in Israel. My oldest daughter just left last night back to Eretz Yisrael.
Wow.
And my second daughter, please God, who just got married, will be going there, and that's where we belong. So it's not an if, but a when. But in the meantime, I don't see myself, we don't see ourselves anywhere else other than Boca, even though we've had opportunities and wonderful conversations that are very flattering and they're beautiful. But Boca is where our heart is. I said at my installation, when they made me the Rav, I said, I entered this relationship like I did my marriage, intending to have no other and to spend this the rest of my life. And that's the way I want it to be. We've been in Boca for 20 years all together. And the relationships you form and being with people, it's such pivotal moments of their life, vulnerable moments of their life, the highest highs and the lowest lows. It's your family. And in some ways, you're with them in ways and you know more about them than you do your own family, which creates connection. And it really feels like family. Boca is unusual in that sense. Just the geography of Boca and the way it works. Our shul is the center of, it's called Montoya Circle, that has developments often and on it. And the shul is the center of that circle. And it's true not only geographically, but in people's lives. The shul, it's not just shiurim, and it's not just minyanim, although we have many minyanim every day, 8 minyanim every Shabbos morning, countless shiurim, afternoon kolo, base medrash, midrasha. I can give you the whole spiel about what we offer, but much more than that. It's one of the few places that still functions as a community that transcends the individuals. It's something so much bigger than the sum of the parts. So when we're going through a pandemic, when we're going through a tragic loss, when we're going through a simcha, when we're going through whatever we're going through, we do it as a community. We gather as a community. We mourn as a community. We grieve as a community. We celebrate as a community. We laugh as a community. We sing and dance as a community. And even though it sounds like it's huge numbers, and it is, but there's still that sense of it being a family. When we write an email out to the community, it says, Dear BRS family. And what we hope and dream for our members is that they're not a member of BRS. You're a member at Costco. You're a member at Restaurant Depot. You're not a member at BRS. You're a member of the BRS community. You're a member of the BRS family. It's an altogether different mentality and way of looking at it.
Is that something you learned through doing, I guess, Kellogg or the business training you had?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess I learned it. Some of it explicitly, we strategically articulated, and some of it more implicitly, I guess we've just intuited and have done. But the notion of branding who we are and what we're about. So all of our literature has our logo, Boca Raton Synagogue, and it has our slogan, which is valuing diversity, celebrating unity. And that's not, it took a long time to develop that, to think that through. And every word is meduyak in that sentence. Valuing diversity, celebrating unity.
How long did it take? Because I'm still thinking about it.
It took, I'll give you the Rashi on it. It took a few hours, took a couple days of thinking it through and trying to really wordsmith exactly what would capture how we're feeling, what we're trying to communicate, what it means to be part of who we are. So why do we say valuing diversity? Because some people tolerate diversity. You'll hear that word all the time, tolerate diversity. Tolerate is a horrible word to describe people. The Sri Deish, Rabbi Yaakov Weinberg, has an essay called Esachai Anochi Mivakesh, My Brothers I Want, I Long For. And in there he talks about other denominations, Reform and Conservative. He says, don't tolerate me and I won't tolerate you. You're my brother, you're my sister. I love you, I want you to love me. He doesn't write this, but to paraphrase, you tolerate a bad rash. You tolerate slow Wi-Fi. You tolerate...
like lactose.
Intolerant lactose, right. You tolerate that you didn't get a seat on the train. You don't tolerate people. People are your family. They're creatures of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. People are the holiest thing. We love people. We love people. Even the people we don't like, we have to love. So diversity is not something we tolerate. We value it. We value it. And I'll describe the diversity we have in a second. And then we celebrate unity, because unity is not something which is just coincidental or happens by chance. You really have to work at it. And you have to design it. You have to reinforce it. You have to promote it. You have to get buy-in to it. And unity is very different than uniformity. Rabbi Steinsaltz was just nifter. And he was once in Boca, and I'll never forget this. He was speaking one night, and right beforehand, he was making himself a cup of coffee, which tells you a lot about Rabbi Steinsaltz. There was no entourage, nobody was making it for him, there was no shamash. He's making himself a cup of coffee, and he asked me basically, okay, what's the spiel about your community? What makes Boca different? So I broke right into my valuing diversity, celebrating unity, our slogan. He stopped the cup, he's stirring his coffee, he looks up at me, and he says, obviously, you have diversity if you have unity. If you didn't have diversity, you wouldn't have unity. You'd only have uniformity. It's like, wow.
He slugged you up right there.
Wow.
Like, he got it.
I was like, wow, that's brilliant. Well, that was Rabbi Steinsaltz, right? Something so profound, so simple, in one sentence, without thinking about it, just reacting. What was his point? Is everyone looks the same, acts the same, votes the same, thinks the same, behaves the same. You have uniformity, you don't have unity. Unity, by definition, demands diversity. It means you have people who are different and choose to nevertheless be part of one family, one community, and to operate as one people.
So how do you navigate that? Like practically, I'm sure there's
it's
potential
really
fights or fights that happen or just differences, and
it's complicated. So we have special interest groups, right? Every group has, they want to push the boundary this direction, they want to push the boundary that direction, push the envelope this way. And what we try to remind people all the time, and that's what we're constantly reinforcing through drushes and shiurim and interactions and meetings, is that the notion of community and who we are has to be much bigger than our personal interest. So for example, when, let's say, a more liberal segment of the community will come to me and say, let's introduce X, Y, or Z, Women's Megillah, Women's Prayer Group, whatever the case may be. Happens to be my Rebbeim, and I don't believe in that or wouldn't want to adopt that. But I don't get into that debate. I don't get into that argument. I don't start looking at those sources, and I don't start trying to make that debate. What I say is very simple. I say, look, if we push the envelope in that direction, there are communities who do that, and maybe you'd be attracted to it. But if we do it, we'll lose a whole other segment of the community. So for that 45 minutes of the year, it's not worth breaking up our family. Our family, the unity that's created by what we have, it's so special, it's dynamic. The magic that we have is so special, it's not worth it. And that deflates the conversation right away, because instead of getting into the sources and who's right in Mesorah and Rebbeim, I don't want to get into the debate. I just want to talk strategically. We have a family, we all get along, it's magnificent, we live on the same campus, we live in the same home. Why would we take a more extreme position that will disturb others if it's unnecessary? So to give you an example of the diversity that we have.
Yeah, I want you to paint the picture.
This is not an exaggeration to tell you that on Shabbos morning in shul, you have a guy sitting with a shtreimel sitting next to somebody who drove to shul that Shabbos morning.
Wow.
Now here's the thing. You can have that elsewhere. They happen to be at the same place. There are Chabads and exotic locations where that's the only place to daven, so they both found themselves there. The difference is in our shul, they're talking to each other, they've become friends, and they have a real relationship that now continues beyond the fact that they overlap by sitting near each other. And you have that throughout our community. You have every level of observance, every level of background and education. You have every mentality, every orientation of way of thinking, philosophically, hashkafically, halachically, and even beyond that. And they don't just get along. They don't just get along. They don't just tolerate, right, like a bad rash, one another. But there's a really special notion and quality to being a family. There are relationships which are unbelievably special. A couple summers ago, my wife and I ran a trip to Poland. And we had different groups on this trip. We had about 40 people from the shul, adult trip. And the first night, everybody, just like kids, adults are no different. Everybody migrated to exactly their chaver, the tables for dinner. So we have a whole group of Hasidim who bought homes and who come, and it's a second home. They own a place in Brooklyn, they're in Williamsburg Borough Park, and they bought a place on Montoya Circle. It's beautiful, I love them. They come. So on the Poland trip, they all sat at their table. And then you had a whole group of people who are socially Orthodox. They've sent their kids to Orthodox shuls, they're part of our community. I love them, they're my brothers, my sisters. But in terms of a level of observance, they wouldn't necessarily see themselves as the most rigid, the most observant. You had all different groups, right? First night. I got up and I said, look, we're in Poland. And when our ancestors were loaded into the cattle cars, when they were put into the gas chambers, nobody was segregating them by these groups. We were all together. And by the end of this trip, these tables are going to be all mixed. They're going to be all together. And that's exactly what happened. It didn't take till the end of the trip. Until today, one of these Hasidim and one of the guys who's not Shomer Shabbos are best friends. They fly to each other's simchas. They talk all the time. They're best friends. So there's something incredibly magical. On Shabbos morning, as I said, we had 8 minyanim. We have a Nates minyan, Idut HaMizrach, a Sephardic minyan. We have our Hashkama minyan. We have a main minyan. We have a Shtibel Nusacharim minyan, a whole Chabad contingent who are part of the shul, Karlbach, teen minyan, explanatory service. And basically, unlike many other communities where you try to fit somebody into a box, try to make someone conform to a mold, we tell everybody, be yourself. Find your gate, your entrance to Yiddishkeit. Beis HaMikdash had 12 entrances, the 13th to Shara Kolel, and for everybody. And there's not one way for everybody. And here's the difference, though. Instead of being one block with breakaway minyanim and new shuls and different budgets, different rabbanim, different fundraising obligations, we are one campus, one team of rabbanim, one family, one community. So we let everyone find their diversity. We have a Beis Medrash minyan. Everybody finds their niche, their need, but we also operate as one community.
So there's one shul In
one
Boca
shul.
Raton.
No, there's more than one shul. There are other shuls. We at a time had 2 satellites. One of the satellites broke off into its own shul today. We also have a satellite called Biaris West, which is out 5 miles west of us.
And we'll
Okay.
crush them. No, I'm kidding.
No,
I'm
chas
kidding.
v'shalom,
I'm kidding.
chas v'shalom. It's Rav is one of my best friends, Rabbi
Nice.
Yaakov Gibber.
I
We all get
imagine
along.
that would have been your response.
No, we all get
Like,
along.
Your way of going about it is with ahava, and that's the way to connect everyone.
We're dear friends, and the truth is, Boca is unusual in that sense also, because it's not only in the Orthodox community that we all get along and we partner. As we've gone through this pandemic, we compare notes and we try to be consistent in what we're doing, and we have one another's back. We're not fighting over a new family moves to the community, who's going to get them. It's not just the Orthodox. Something unusual, Reform, Conservative, Orthodox, we all know each other, have genuine relationships, and in areas where we can work together, so fighting anti-Semitism or standing up for Israel, we do. There are real relationships there. So there is a sense of achdus and a sense of unity.
Question that I have for you is, what's the hardest part about being a Rav for you personally?
For me personally, the hardest part, there are several hard things. I could give you the cliched answers about Rabbanim, not enough time with family, all these 4 or 5 months. One of the great gifts of Corona has been a renewed opportunity to spend wonderful time with family. I could give you the cliched answer about the critics and the haters and the hate mail and the people always looking to get you and the gotcha and so on. That's not it. That's not it. I'll tell you, for me, the hardest part of Rabbanus is what I call the Jewish middle class. What do I mean by that? In the last election, they haven't gotten up to it yet in this one, they talked all about the middle class. Who is going to respond best? Who is going to meet the needs the most of the middle class? The middle class get neglected. The rich are taken care of and the poor are taken care of, but the middle class, that was the whole conversation. In Jewish life, I think the middle class also really get the raw deal. Why? The people in crisis, your family on Tom Shabbos, your family going through a horrible illness, your family going through a divorce, your family with a child, your family in crisis, get a lot of love, get a lot of attention. They deserve it, they need it. It's why we're in what we're in, why we do what we do. The more wealthy, somebody's got to keep the lights on. So we're involved in fundraising and developing relationships and communal development. You got to keep the lights on. The middle class, if you're just your average Joe in a community in a shul, unless you have a shaila for your Rav, unless your kid's going through a bar mitzvah or you need a Masada Kedushin, you can be invisible. You can be invisible. So to me, we've got close to 900 families. I can't tell you how often I see someone in shul and I wish I can call them, let's have lunch, let's have coffee, let's catch up. I want to find out what's going on in your life. I want to be involved. I want you to know about my life. It's reciprocal. I grow through that relationship as well. It's not like I think that I'm a Mayan, I'm a Gaber, I'm just going to give to you. It's both. It's both. Asay lecha Rav. I think Pshat and Asay lecha Rav is not just you should make for yourself a Rav, but from the perspective of the Rav, Asay lecha. You also make the Rav. I've learned so much from Mispalim. I've learned and grown an incredible amount from the diverse people that I've related to. So I look and I long, and then what happens for every Rav at the end of davening is you get surrounded by the people who have the shaila, or the people who just, they're obsessive, or the people who are neurotic, or the people who are nervous, or the people who, it's some social currency that they're close to the Rav. All different reasons they surround you. And that guy in the back who for 3 weeks you've been trying to catch him. What's going on? Whatever happened? How's your kid? What happened to your mother-in-law? You can't. And you're going to start calling 800, 900 families.
Right.
So that's the hardest part for me, is that there's this whole middle class of people who I want to know better and I want to be more involved with and I want to try to inspire and be inspired by, but it's just hard. There's just a limited number of hours in the day.
How do you, what could you even do? You have such a big Hillel. How do you get around to all them?
So it's hard. It's very, very hard. You try to be there for them in the vulnerable moments. You try to be there in life cycle moments. You try to be responsive to shilas. You try to be genuine. I'm a heartsick guy. I wear my heart on my sleeve, and that's a double-edged sword. So that means that if a person's going through something, I feel it with them. I'm not afraid to cry from the bima. I cry in a drush. I cry in a hesped. I cry or behind the bima.
Can we try to make you cry right now, like Yaakov?
For sure.
Go for it.
I don't know what to say.
We'll get to it. Yeah, go on.
Say something about the Red Sox. No. So I'm not afraid to do that. So I try to really be there genuinely for people and with people. It also makes you vulnerable, because it means that the person who writes that dig of a text or that email, who knows exactly how to push your button or get you or catch you, is also going to get under your skin. It's if you have thick skin, then as a Rav you won't get hurt, but you also won't connect or feel other people's pain. So if you're the type of person who wants to be vulnerable, feel other people's pain, then it means you're also vulnerable to getting caused pain yourself. So it's a double-edged sword, but I wouldn't have it any other way.
Like, imagine 900 families. I don't know. There's probably a lot of simchas. Probably a lot more simchas than tragedies, levayas. But I mean, like in a month, there probably could be double-digit levayas, no?
I wouldn't say double digit, but there's a lot that goes on, and you can have both. You can go from the levaya to the wedding, literally change the tie in the car, and not just change the tie and change the attitude and mentality, change the facial expression, change your demeanor, and you're not putting on an act. It's real. It's real. You felt the pain of the family that you were trying to give a hesped that would honor their loved one, and then you feel the joy of the family that has gotten to this moment. You're so excited to be with them under the chuppah, and you've just got to be. I think that something I've tried to work hard on, particularly lately, is mindfulness, is being present. Is being in the presence. I know you just had the Baal in the presence.
Yeah.
We both had a little bit of a dose of mindfulness in our last episode. It was pretty. I mean, it sounds exhausting though.
It's exhausting. So you got to disconnect. You got to find a way to really just recharge.
How do you recharge?
What do you do for fun? Watch Red Sox?
Definitely not. What I do for fun. So I can tell you again the cliched answer, which is true for me also, is I love learning, and I have a chavrusa, and I finished the last cycle of the daf and back in it again and praying shiurim, and there's nothing that invigorates and makes me as excited as learning, teaching Torah. It's all true, but it's also cliche and predictable probably to answer that question. So I'll give you maybe the less predictable, which is I love listening to comedy.
Really?
There are clean comedians, and I think laughter is the best medicine. I tell you, for everybody.
Brian Regan?
Brian Regan's good. Brian
Okay.
Regan's good. Jim Gaffigan's good. Seinfeld, for the most part, is good. There is a genre of clean comedians. Even the old Jackie Mason, who was politically incorrect today, could never say anything he says. But there are a genre of clean comedians. Laughter is the best medicine. And that's, research has shown that even in terms of mental health, physical health. And I think that's true with stress, whatever you're going through. I often come back from a levaya and I put on comedy in the car. You've got to just come back to life. You got to laugh. Laughter's the best medicine.
That's such a cool answer. That's really cool. Something that I've seen with you is I see you all over the interweb. You have a website, and you're on YU Torah, and you're Twitter, and you have your own podcast. And I think you got in earlier for the Rabbinical, than most people. What was that like? Did you get pushback at first?
Definitely got pushback.
Yeah?
Did you?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I probably took out of Kellogg, although I don't know I thought about it in this way, was that you've got to reach people where they are. I mean, it's marketing 101, is not reach them where you wish they were, not reach them where you are, reach people where they are. And there was, you could see it then and still now, a whole world of people who are not physically coming into shul. They're not sitting at your shiur. You're not going to have a direct connection or audience with them. So either you can live on your perch or in your ivory tower and sit in judgment and righteous indignation of them, or you can try to utilize the very platform they're utilizing it, but don't lower yourself to the way they're doing it. There's a beautiful Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer that talks about Avram Avinu when Yishmael is expelled from the home. If you fast forward, you see that Yishmael is at Avram's levaya. Yishmael comes to his funeral. You can almost see the picture, right? Yitzchak's up there. He's about to give his hesped. It's like a motorcycle that comes in the back of the room. And Yishmael comes off with his tattoos and he pierces. He comes up. He puts his arm around his brother. And the Posek describes they give a hesped together. They eulogize their father together. And you're like a student of Chumash. You're like, what? The last we saw Yishmael was getting kicked out of the house. And now he's back? What happened in between? So the Pirkei Rabbi Eliezer fills in. It says that several times Avram asked Sarah, said, look, I know you asked me, you told me that Yishmael's a bad influence on our Yitzchak, but he's my son. I love him. Right? When he takes Yitzchak to the Akedah, Kadosh Baruch Hu has to say, the one is Bincha, Asher Ahavta, as Yitzchak. He has to get to as Yitzchak, because Avram says, Bincha, I have two. Asher Ahavta, I love them both. Hashem has to say as Yitzchak, because he loves Yishmael. He says, sorry, I love Yishmael. Come on. Sometimes there's somebody, you got to practice tough love. Sometimes you have to expel someone from the home. But Avram says, how could I not know what's going on? So Sarah says, I'll make you a deal. You can go see where he is, go see what he's up to. But don't get off the camel. You have to stay on the camel. And the Medrash describes how 3 times he goes to Yishmael's tent. All 3 times he's not home. He meets Yishmael's wife. The Medrash goes out of its way to say Avram stays on the camel and talks to her from the camel, leaves a message for Yishmael. And there's an enormously powerful message. Yishmael knows his father always loves him. He never doubts his father's love. Even when his father had to take that drastic measure, he never doubts that his father loved him. But Avram, also, while he goes to Yishmael to see where he is, he doesn't get off the camel. There are ways to engage social media where you don't get off the camel. Getting off the camel means that your notifications are on, where you're obsessed with how many people are liking or reposting or retweeting or commenting. It means you start answering the trolls and you get lost into these conversations. It means you start to believe the hype. You start to care about how many numbers, which are inflated and fake anyway. That's when you've gotten off the camel. But when you use it as a platform and you say, I could reach people, why wouldn't I? Why wouldn't I? Ad hayom hazeh, until today, I have a debate with colleagues, dear friends, who half make fun of me, but half have a legitimate debate and say, social media not for me, recording my shiurim not for me. And I say, why not? He says, I'm humble, I'm modest, I just do my thing, I don't need that. I say, you're so humble, you're so modest? You don't get up from the bima and give a drasha Shabbos morning? You don't give a Shabbos Shuvah drasha? Who are you to pack a shul and tell everyone what you think? It doesn't sound so humble and modest to me. Elamai, what? You think Hashem gave you certain tools, certain talents, certain blessings, certain skills, and you're trying to be a conduit, an instrument to bring His message to a masses. So now tell me, what right do you have not to utilize these things? All you're doing is speaking to the people right in front of you. What's your heter? What's your excuse not to utilize more tools? So I feel enormously vindicated. When I first started, there was an asifa, and the world was calling all this stuff treif, and nobody was going near it, touching it. You remember those days, or you could read about it. Fast forward to today, and I see the agudas on Twitter, and I see this Rav has a Facebook page and this Facebook living shiurim.
Just from the pandemic alone, everyone jumped to...
Pandemic alone, first of all, there should be a major self-reflection about technology and Torah, I think.
It's been incredible, no?
There are still some who say, no, I only teach on the telephone. Right? Rabbi Waxman, I went to his home a few nights ago. I Baruch Hashem, I have a relationship with him. He stayed strong. He's no Zoom, no internet. He's been teaching over the telephone. And kol hakavod, I respect that. I admire that.
He's one of
I understand
a
that.
few.
He's Yechidim. I'm talking about the Agudah Yarchei Kala now is on Zoom. So why don't we all talk about the fact that the internet is actually more like a telephone, in the sense that you can call wrong numbers and you can speak lashon hara and you can call inappropriate, or you could use the telephone for a dial a daf. So the internet needs filters. Everybody should be very careful what they allow, the images. They need boundaries. Everybody, of course, that should be a davar pasha. That should be obvious. But we should also embrace it as this vehicle. What would the last 5 months have looked like if we didn't have this vehicle to teach Torah? So I was early on. There were people who were critical. But I think what's really, really important is to never buy into the hype, never start believing, never get lost in following. I turn the notifications off on my phone, because when I post something, an article, a shiur, a provocative question, I don't want the Yetzer Hara to have me keep reaching for it every 2 seconds. Did it catch on? Did it go viral?
It's a lot of self-control.
But it's very hard. Like you mentioned about staying on the camel. A lot, I guess, I don't know what the whole movement against it, what they hang their hat on nowadays, but I'd imagine a big part of it is you could be off the camel without even trying to be off the camel.
It's very hard.
And there's stuff about like dopamine and, with the checking your phone, it becomes almost like a scientific thing. It's not even like a decision you're making. You post something, you're checking, and once you're off the camel, to get back,
correct,
can be so hard. So what's an answer to that?
100%. And I'll tell you, the camel, it's not like you're sitting on the camel comfortably and you can stay there. There are tropical storm or hurricane storm winds trying to blow you off the camel. The saddle of the camel is like smeared with oil where you're slipping right off the camel. And there's someone pulling your leg trying to drag you off the camel, right? If we're going to take this metaphor all the way. So it's not like you...
Poor camel.
Right, poor camel. It's not like you sit there comfortably on the camel. I agree. So I'll tell you, I personally admire the segment of the community who say that we're not connected in that way. I think have a greater clarity, a greater mindfulness, a greater purity, a greater innocence. I admire that. I just don't know that it's sustainable or feasible for the Amcha. For the majority of people who are interacting with the world, who are working, who are doing banking, who need to find the train schedule, or who need to know exactly to be redirected around the traffic on their way here, I don't know. So, again, I think this is a big question in life in general. We can look with a sense of judgment, and we can serve a world the way we wish it were, or we can look at the world the way it is and decide that that's the world that we need to service. Now, we don't need to get off the camel even when we're doing that. So that's why we need Gedarim, and that's why we need Chizuk, and that's why we need Rebbeim, and that's why we need spouses, and that's why we need friends. And we even have children. I have my children give me a lot of Chizuk, in this area, and will try to push me back if I've gone too far. We just celebrated a Simcha. Is it a violation of the boundary if you come off the camel, if you acknowledge your Simcha on your social media, that you use 99.9% to promote Shiurim and Torah? Have you gotten off the camel? It's a good question. And my children have caused me to think about that. It's a good question.
It is a good question. I don't know.
What's the answer? What's your answer?
The answer is you shouldn't do anything that your children aren't comfortable with. They have enough price that you're a Rav, so that you shouldn't do anything. None of my children are on social media, and they see my involvement.
Is that something that you want keep it that way? Is that
Yeah, listen, in an ideal world, I think social media, again, there's a lot of studies that correlate social media with a spike of mental illness, the whole FOMO movement. You're looking
Right.
at caricatures of people's lives. You're not really seeing the way they live. That awesome dessert, that incredible vacation, that amazing moment, that simcha. Nobody ever posts when they're sitting lonely or miserable or depressed, or the food that flopped.
it's a false reality?
It's
It
a false
It paints
reality.
a picture that doesn't exist.
And it breeds FOMO, and FOMO breeds anxiety and mental illness. And of course, if you can get off of it, 100%. Snapchat causes you to not live your life. You're living your life and your 100 closest friends simultaneously. It's hard enough to live your life. How are you going to live your life and 100 other people at the same time? It's also been proven, like you're talking about the dopamine relief, it is as addictive as a drug. And it clouds your judgment as much as a drug. So yeah, absolutely. In the ideal world, I think it'd be great for them to be off of it. I'll tell you very proudly that my wife and I have never forbade them from being on it, but I hope that we've educated and inspired them together with their rebbe, with their schools, with their teachers, that they don't have an interest in being on it. I think they've seen or are aware of some of the dangers of it, and they're able to satisfy, first of all, what they see at our Shabbos table and the range of people and the topics and whatever curiosity they have for life, they're able to satisfy in other ways.
Better than cable.
Better than cable. It's reality TV.
It's very ironic that you're saying all this because your daughter, people can't see her on the camera or can't hear her on the audio. She's right over here, and props to you.
I'm not turning around because I don't want to see the faces she's making at this moment.
She's, I think, making a face like, why are they talking about me now?
Guys, we'll continue with Rabbi Efrem Goldberg in just a second. And by the way, we're not reading this ad in front of him. This is totally done in post. But we want to tell you a little story. You guys like stories. So
Story time. This is not a fake story. This is a real story.
this one's a real story. So as you can probably hear in my voice, not throughout our episode, but just the intro and now, I have a bit of the sniffles.
Yaakov's got a cold, guys.
I've got a cold.
What's your name for Yaakov Ben?
Yaakov Ben Panina,
Yaakov Ben Panina, guys.
Yeah,
He
please.
has the sniffles.
please. But
I was speaking to Yaakov
Yeah.
and I said, where's like the last place you want to be right now?
right now,
Yeah.
Zimbabwe. It's not in the
Where's the
mood.
second to last place you want to be right now?
The pharmacy. I don't want to go out and
No.
have to take care of it.
No, you're not feeling well. You want to
No,
just stay home,
I just
be
wanna
in bed,
chill in
chicken
bed,
soup.
or sit on these comfy couches.
Yeah, with the
With
AC
you.
working. That's what's up.
Is it working?
It is, but it's not on. Whatever. On to the next.
But I don't want to have to go to a pharmacy. I want the medication. Obviously, I have a cold, so there's not really like cold drugs, but there's things to help it, like amoxicillin, whatever it is.
Humidifier.
AMR takes care of you. And obviously, we're talking about a cold now, but it's so much more than just that. It's those classic prescriptions. I always say subscriptions, but that's the wrong word.
It's prescriptions. If you have prescription meds, which a lot of people do. If you
people
don't,
do.
good for you. But if
Yeah.
if you're
but
like
you know what? You know someone who does.
exactly, it could
You
be your
know-
mother, it could be your father, it could be your grandmother, grandfather. Enough of them trying to figure out.
Yeah, and it will be you eventually. I mean,
Well, that's,
just-
something, that's something to look forward to.
No, meaning not even like getting older. Just like someone gets strep, they all of a sudden
Yeah,
they need
that's true.
medication.
That's true.
It applies to everyone. Needs medication at some point.
We get stopped a lot nowadays asking us, who is AMR Farm? Guys, you know who they are already.
Sometimes people are like, "Who's ARM?" I'm like, "Arm? I don't know."
Yeah, right? Wow, good spelling. But guys, just hit them up. Get started with the best pharmacy in the world because we're not going to stop until you do. So head to amrfarmrx.com or give them a call. They have really great customer service, nice people to talk to. You can
I
say
want
you
to say
heard,
the number.
You can say you heard about them on the podcast, and Yaakov's going to make an attempt to say the number. Go for it.
I don't have a good memory, but I think I remember it. 848-222-1110.
It's 848-222-1110.
You got to say the number also.
Yes, I had to. It's like in my blood.
Okay, Nach, tell us a little about daily giving.
dailygiving.org, the one-stop shop for Tzedakah Yomi. You want to check that box. You want to make sure every day you're giving to somebody, to something that is meaningful.
For those who don't know, and for those who even do know, Chazar Zeker, it's basically a brilliant organization idea where they go to tons of organizations that really, really need
42
our
to
help.
be precise.
Yeah, and it's always growing, right?
Yeah.
And you give $1 a day, and it goes towards an organization. So I just I don't remember. It was like over $3,000.
It's over $3,500 a day. I
Wow.
believe that's going. So let's say yesterday you get an email. United Hatzalah got your dollar, and your dollar was one of 3,500 other dollars that was given. And in the course of the year, they're giving out millions of dollars to these organizations.
You know what I like about it? There's two things I like about it. First of all, I haven't been going to shul as much as I typically do.
Right.
So that dollar that when you put it out, the pushka going around, I don't have that opportunity anymore. So I have it with this, which I already signed up for and it's already taken care of. And also the second thing is that I don't even remember the names of it. There's so many of these beautiful organizations that they send in the email. I'm like, I never heard of this organization. I do a little research. I look at it. I'm like, wow, that's a really, really nice organization that I never would have even known, but boom, my dollar's going to them.
Yeah, and I think the cool part is you're really part of a people, and you're not just giving $1 a day. You're part of a collective group that's giving, right now it's $3,500 a day. And that's an incredible amount of money. It's an incredible schar and mitzvahs that you're involved in. So go ahead and get involved. Head to dailygiving.org and sign up.
And you too can become a meaningful people.
.com.
I read somewhere that Boca is one of the fastest growing Jewish community in southern
Florida for a while. In America, it's very hard to measure.
It's growing.
America sounds better.
It's growing
America
a lot.
sounds better, right?
Every day I'm having friends. They're just like, we're in New York. They're like, what are we doing here?
Could you pitch us?
Boca.
Could you pitch us right now?
100%. First of all, the lifestyle is unbelievable. Not this time of year, it's a little warm outside. The pace of life, the quality of life, the diversity of people, the fact that you're not living under a microscope. No state income tax is a big one. There are a lot of really great reasons to
If you just paid taxes right now, you'd also, be in.
No, I'll tell you, this is, I can't overstate this. As much as, this connects our conversations until now. As much as people are on social media or they're connected with others online, they are incredibly and profoundly lonely offline. And I think that you can live in communities, and we've been up here now for the Simcha between quarantining and the Simcha, and now we're going to go back. The amenities up here are unbelievable. I was in a Sfarim store earlier today, and I said to the guy helping me, I said, I feel bad. He said, why do you feel bad? I said, because when I go to Eretz Yisrael, I get so excited. The Sfarim stores there are amazing. And I go my yarmulke shopping, and I go my this shopping, and my that shopping, and I go to Hadar Gula, and I get my cholent, my kigel, and I get my... And you have that here. Like, you don't have that excitement, that association with that's what I go to Eretz Yisrael for. Mm-hmm. Like, you've created that mini version here. Those amenities are amazing. They're amazing. And yet, with shul on every block and a kollel on every block and 15 shalom places to go to on every block, people are incredibly lonely and they're lost. They feel invisible and inconsequential. And they're struggling. Where do I fit in? What difference do I make? Why am I here? What is life about? And when you're part of a community, you're part of a family. And as large as we've grown, I tell the people who move in, there's something for you. You're going to be that guy. You're going to be that woman. You're going to be that kid. You're going to make a name for yourself. You're going to make a difference. You're going to matter. And people will know you, and the relationships you're going to form, you're going to be such a richer person. You're going to be living in high definition color instead of black and white. Because you're going to know Sephardim and Ashkenazim, older and younger. You're going to know non-from people and someone who became from through Chabad and a guy who identifies as Karlbach. And you're going to know all, then you're going to know the base measurement, and they're going to all connection. And your worlds are going to not just, you're not going to tolerate that, and you're not going to be the outlier or the anomaly because of that. It's going to all make sense. You're going to be part of a family. It's the way the family operates. And that quality of life is amazing. The people who move in, they love it. It's what's attracting this newest segment who's coming, which are these Hasidim. These Hasidim whose kids are grown up, they're not worried about Shidduchim, that they have a place. The families from Lakewood and families from Borough Park were getting a house. And when they come, they're not trying to come, unlike other places, let's say, where they move in and try to take over. They're coming in and they're saying, no, we want to join for this. This is refreshing. This is different. This is new. The kind of speakers, the kind of shiurim, the kind of people I'm meeting, the relationships I'm forming. They don't want that 365 days a year. It's not necessarily the core of who they are. They're going back to live where they are, but they love it. It's refreshing. It's something special.
Yeah, and I don't know if you're allowed to deny or confirm, but I heard that even Ben Shapiro is moving to a community that's...
It's possible that Behind the Bima will not be the most popular podcast broadcast from Boca Raton in the short-term future.
Wow. And talking about Behind the Bima, you have a podcast, which I listen to. It's awesome.
Thank you.
And I also do.
Oh, sorry. Nachi also does.
Thank you.
Is it awesome, Nachi?
It's pretty cool.
So you're the two who listen. No, thank you.
No, you're the
So could you tell our listeners what goes on Behind the Bima? It's similar in ways, but it's different.
Sure. Behind the Bima started accidentally. What happened was during the quarantine, during the shutdown, the only connection we had, so it used to be that at a kiddush or after shul or what I was describing to you in the lobby or walking to your car or running into someone in the restaurant, you'd see somebody, hey, you put your arm around, you could give up. Remember when you were allowed to shake a hand or touch other people?
Yeah, I see on YouTube sometimes clips and people are touching each other. I'm like, what's going on? A crowd?
I was going through an old album in our house and I saw on a vacation we ran into another family. My wife's arm was around the other person and I jumped. Oh no, I hope they don't have it. No, that was okay. That was 5 years ago. Yeah. So you'd run into people and you'd have that real person to person. Kamayim panim al panim. You really connected one person's heart to another. And then what happened is the shutdown. So now how are we connecting with people? I give this year, that year, the other year, the next year, the next year, the next year. You can watch me give a year to you. We really miss that connection. So we said, and based on feedback from people, we started this podcast where it was, we started at first, it was called Coffee Talk, even though it was at 9 o'clock at night, and we never drank coffee, but there was something else in our cup. And we'd start out with the l'chaim, and we just schmooze. What's going on in your life? What's going on in your life?
And the community would watch.
And the community would watch, and the chat would be alive, and the questions that were coming in, and the feedback and the comments, and there was a back and forth, and how did we reach this decision, and why are we doing this policy, and where are we going next, and how are we dealing with everything, and got a behind the bima glimpse at what was going on. And then we just, we changed that name. We started bringing in guests, and we've had, and the goal of Behind the Bima is to go behind the Bima with people. So when we had Rav Moshe Weinberger, who I know you had on, it was an amazing podcast that you guys did. Everything you're doing is amazing.
Thank you so
I'm blown
much.
away by it. Really. It's really, really special. And your schar is tremendous. The people that you're touching, you're inspiring. It's really beautiful.
Thank you.
So, to go behind the Bima with Rav Weinberger, I'm zocheh to know Rav Weinberger for a long time. There's the public Rav Weinberger, but let's talk about Rav Weinberger. You ever struggled to daven? Have you ever had a failure? Did you ever think about not going into this Rabbanos? Have you ever wanted to walk away? Aaron Cutler, the CEO of Lakewood. Tell us what's going on in Lakewood behind the scenes, behind the Bima. And Eli Beer, who talked to us most recently about what it was like, the moments before he was put on a respirator to call his children and say goodbye, not knowing if he'd ever wake up and see them.
That's crazy.
And when he described that moment, it's just powerful. I mean, it gives you the chills. So that's the goal, is to go behind the Bima with people. And it's fun. We still have a good time. We interview someone 15, 20 minutes of it. We schmooze, and we have different segments for other parts of it. We have our sponsors, and our sponsors send in product placement, and we're having a good time. We're having fun with something that we never saw ourselves doing. But it's a small part of what we do. The truth is, if someone said to me, I could listen to one thing that you put out there, what would it be? It would not be Behind the Beam.
What would it be? If there's one thing.
I give a lot of shiurim every week. I'm really proud of. I feel like HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm so grateful to him every day. It's on loan. It's not part of my permanent collection. He could take it away as quickly as he gave it. But I feel very blessed that he's invited me to be his partner, to try to share his Torah. And his Torah's timeless messages for this world. Everything I try to do is in a contemporary way. What is it telling us for today? How does it inspire our here and now? So I have a Living with Emunah series, and I have a Parsha Shir, and I do siddur snippets, 6-minute siddur snippets.
My brother's in that WhatsApp group. He loves it.
So we started at Moda'ani, and we've made our way through. I was not before Meaningful Minute, I don't think, but I was early on the WhatsApp also. It said you could use WhatsApp to create groups and get to people, although WhatsApp has made it impossibly difficult when you have multiple
because they're trying to combat
groups.
Spreading false stuff.
Oh, the hate.
That's
For
why
people who don't know, Nachi is literally, he's like a macher. He has 3 phones.
I'm not a macher.
And he's posting a meaningful
No, it's
minute.
unbelievable,
Whenever I
'cause
see him,
the
he
amount
keeps on posting. He's like, I have to get to phone 3 now.
I'm a nobody and a nothing. My siddur snippets is 10 groups, and I know that you can only read forward to 5 at a time, so you got to forward to that's why my Meaningful Minute comes in at 3 a.m. most of the time. I'm on the rotation that gets it in the middle of the night from him.
They did that because of to stop the spread of fake news.
Right.
So someone can't just send something to a million people. They have to actually, it stopped bots from doing that.
Right, which is very smart. So I have a siddur snippets WhatsApp groups, Living with Emunah WhatsApp group, and then a Turn Friday into Erev Shabbos, where Friday morning people wake up and there's a short message, how Friday cannot be Friday, how Friday can be Erev Shabbos, and then 6 p.m. every Friday we have 10 minutes, something inspirational for Shabbos. So using WhatsApp group, although I'm looking for the next thing. You already found it with your amazing new app.
And you're active on it. So
try to be. Anyone who doesn't have it should download it. It's fantastic. It's really special. It's the best. What you've done is you've captured the best of social media without social media to create a Torah social media app, it's a brilliant, brilliant design. So if someone said to me, I could listen to one thing that you put out, what would it be? I'd say, listen to Parsha, Living with Emunah, do the siddur snippets. But Behind the Beam is fun. You want to be entertained, hopefully inspired also. You have some time while you're driving or cooking or exercising, do Behind the Bima. But if you want to grow, join me and come on this journey with me through one of these other things.
And move to Boca.
All
right, we'll discuss it.
Okay.
Something
we did. You're ready. Listen, I'm driving down.
But then you'll be
back.
the third biggest podcast in Boca then.
I'll take it.
I don't know if that's
it.
true. We don't know if that's true.
Should I tell you a great story, by the way? You actually would appreciate it.
Yeah.
So we quarantined in Muncie. We finally came out of the quarantine in time for the wedding. And I was with my children picking up food, standing outside. And David Lichtenstein walked by. He recognized me. I never met him in person. We'd spoken. So we're talking to each other, both wearing masks. I think the only one in a 50-mile radius. And a young man walks over, like a yeshiva bacher, and he holds out his phone. And it's his podcast player. And he says, look at my most the podcast I love listening to. It was Headlines, Behind the Bima, and Meaningful People. Now the order was Meaningful People.
Oh gosh.
Behind the Bima, Headlines. So I'll take it.
I'll take it. To be with you two, and it's a schus for us.
It was a great moment.
That's really.
What did he say? Because we've tried getting him, but
We
messaged him before the pandemic, and he said, "I know he writes a lot of Torah, like a lot, and he's very busy with that." And he said, "I'm so busy." And then the pandemic hit, and I'm like, "Dude, maybe you have more time now." And we're getting closer. We're getting closer.
I'll put in a good word, but he's actually one of my favorite people, and I'll tell you why. I love unpredictable people. I love.
If you ever listen to any of his episodes, they're pretty unpredictable. And he's not like scared to say.
If you look at his background, his world, he's a big Talmud Chacham. He's a visionary. I love unpredictable people because most people that within 5 minutes of meeting them, I can tell you exactly where they stand on everything: abortion, gun control, what they vote, what team they root for.
Can we try that out?
Should we try it?
Go for it.
It's probably. I mean, there's probably a lot of like from people like it's go into a certain.
I know
category. Simple.
Yeah.
Menachi's pro-abortion, but aside from that, no, I'm kidding. Chasham, no, Chasham. That was a joke.
That was a joke. That was a great joke, Yaakov. Thanks for that.
It's so crazy.
I'll tell my wife and my child that.
I don't approve this message. No, but you meet people. You know what I'm saying. If you ask, let's say you could probably come up with a matrix of a series of questions which you could ask people in 30 seconds, and based on their answers, predict where they are on everything else. Particularly in the frum world, right? Which segment of the frum world, what yeshivas they went to, where they are right now, how they think. I love unpredictable. Kadosh Baruch Hu created us.
I'm waving my hands up and down. So
no, kishem shein parts of him dom zelzeh, kach in deos dom zelzeh. Just like our faces are different, our deos are different. And there's a beautiful pshat in it. I forgot who says it. What does it mean, kishem? Just like people's faces are different. So he says, you're never angry at somebody because they look different. You don't say, you have to have my color hair. You have to look exactly like me. We understand that people have different features, people have different color hair, people have different heights, people look different, and that's not in their control. Their genetics determine that outcome. So similarly, their deos, people are designed to think differently. And just like you don't hold it against them and you're not angry at them for what they look like, you also have to respect and make space for people who think differently. So that's part of who I am. It's actually what made me fall in love with my wife. We have this very much in common, is having lived lives where we try to take the best of everyone and everything we've been exposed to within the Torah rubric, within the Torah framework, of course, within authentic Masorah, to take the best and to be unpredictable. So you may not know I wear a tishbekasha.
Really?
But on the other hand, I'm friends and can play golf with a Reform rabbi colleague and can whatever. Just unpredictable. Just take the best.
Yaakov was also a little bit unstable. So this you could probably sum him up really quickly also.
Yesterday I was at the Skver Rebbe for a bracha, but I'll also go into the city to Twitter headquarters last summer when I was here because I want to talk to them about how to use Twitter best to be able to get out there and so on.
Really?
I love unpredictable people and being unpredictable. It's such a rich, beautiful world. Why would we deprive and deny ourselves the ability to take and learn the best from all of them? So that's back to David Lichtenstein, and people like that. I love just genuine and wonderful and great people. I'm name dropping a little bit here, but I'm zoch to be close with Rav Asher Weiss, Shleit in Eretz Yisrael, the Minchas Asher. Rav Asher Weiss is a Kloisenberger Chassid. He knows Kol Torah Kula. He's one of Gedolei Yisrael. He's one of the Posek Ador. He knows the encyclopedia Bapeh. He read the encyclopedia as a kid and he knows it by heart. And I once had the privilege of being at a zoo with him, and he was pointing out every animal to me and why this is unique and specific, and this animal comes from here. And this, they don't have to look over their shoulder. They're not worried. There's a certain level of being unpredictable in the conversations with them. And I think that's what Akash Baruch Hu wants from us, is not to conform and not to fit in. I like to say to people, you'll put me in a box when I'm dead. Don't put me in a box. None of us need to label or be in a box. Take the best. That's part of the theme of our shul, of our BRS family, is not being in a box, is this diversity and this unity. And the reason I think that I'm a match for our shul, or we're a match, my wife and I as a team for our shul, is because it's who we are. It's who we are. It's comfortable in the Lakewood world, and comfortable in the Hasidic world, and comfortable with non-from Jews. We could spend endless hours with non-observant Jews who very different way of thinking and very different lifestyle, but find commonalities and connections and find what is redeeming, what's beautiful, what's worthwhile to grow with from them.
Do you have any pet peeves, or what are they?
I have a lot of pet peeves. When my children don't tuck the chair back in, it drives me crazy.
Really?
Do you know the Alter of Kelm, Revolba brings us down, Ali Shor says that if you don't tuck your chair in, it's like being Mechal Shabbos. It's in his entry. It's in his entry.
Imagine you do that on Shabbos with a muksa like.
I'm going to hell.
It's in his entry on Seder. The Ali Shor talks about the vad he gave on Seder, living with order. So he quotes the Alter of Kelm. The Alter of Kelm writes there that Seder is like the string of a pearl necklace. You know, a pearl necklace, what's most valuable, the pearls. That's what has the value. The string is negligible. The string is worthless. The string costs nothing. Take away the string, the pearls fall and roll all over the floor. You don't have them. So Seder is not something worth worshiping on its own, but without Seder, you have nothing. You can accomplish nothing. That's why Seder is such a critical and important value to how we live our lives. So in there, the Ali Shor quotes the Alter of Kelm, who says, if you don't tuck your chair back in, it's like you're Machal Shabbos. So that's a pet peeve.
I have to remember to tuck my chair back in after
I
this
have real pet peeves. What are my real pet peeves? I don't like people who judge other people. I don't like people who marginalize. I don't like people who judge the cover for the book, so to say, instead of getting to know people. I don't like people who raise problems without offering solutions. My community knows that too. Come to me with anything. But if you're bringing a problem, you have to either offer a solution or offer to be part of the solution. Because problems I don't need your help with.
Right.
Problems I
Right.
know.
Go list problems.
Right. All the, how Yom Noram going to work this year with the pandemic and all the things that are going to work. I got that. I got all the questions, all the problems. We have that. We're good. We're good. So raise a problem if you also either have a solution, a suggestion for a solution, or you're willing to be part of the solution. But to just give advice and just to give opinions and just to give criticism without offering to be part of the solution, that's a big pet peeve of mine.
Is there a particular mitzvah that's most dear in your heart, or you enjoy doing it? That's the question, yeah.
Yeah, I love the mitzvah to eat on Erev Yom Kippur.
Okay.
It's a Gravaldic
That's a
mitzvah.
great mitzvah.
No,
Doesn't look like it gets to you too much.
I've
do you
been
work
working on
out?
it.
Yeah.
I've been working on it. I've been trying. I had a Peloton that for a few years collected clothing, and then during the pandemic,
Yeah.
I decided it was going to give me my sanity. And I actually have a small WhatsApp group of a few people who will remain anonymous. And whenever we go on a ride, we post our score, and that competitiveness drives us.
You have a lot of
And it's
WhatsApp
been-
groups.
I have a lot of WhatsApp groups, exactly. That one when I don't invite the public to join. And I like to play tennis. I used to play ball back in the day, but I tore my Achilles a few years ago and had surgery.
So that's your mitzvah, eating
And
on
that was
Yom
it.
Kippur.
No, that's not my mitzvah. That was just my joke mitzvah.
I feel like
It's
you're.
a
Are you a
great
Kohen?
mitzvah.
Are you? I feel like
Not a Kohen.
you're not a Kohen.
Not
okay.
a Kohen. I'll tell you. Again, I'm not going to give you the cliche Talmud Torah.
No, but maybe it is. Maybe it is.
It is. But it's really Shiluach HaKain. No, I'll tell you what my mitzvah is. My mitzvah right now is Shabbos. I love and I live for Shabbos.
What do you mean right now? Like more
It means today. It means that at different kufas of my life, during different periods of my life, I was drawn to different things. Different things lit me on fire. One of the beautiful things about being a Rav is you get to talk about, you get to try to inspire based on your own life and your own living, what you're going through. So whether the svarim that you're buying or the people you're listening to or the messages you're communicating based on what's doing it for you right now. When I write a drasha, when I walk into shul, back in the day that we could do that, I know here it's post-corona in certain communities. Florida's still very much in corona. But when I give a drasha, I'm saying to myself, if I were walking in, what would I need to hear me speak about this week? What happened in the world? I don't mean to tell people how to vote. I don't talk about politics. I don't talk about current events. But I mean, did something happen significant in the world right now? Does someone need chizuk? Do we need comfort? Do we need to celebrate something together? What's going on in people's lives? So I'm just trying to live as part of the Amcha. I don't see myself as exceptional or different. I didn't come out of my mother's womb with a beard and saw myself as a Rab and walk around in a Rabbanish way. You know, I have two types of friends in Rabbanas. They're the people who take themselves seriously and the people who take what they do seriously. And I love the people who take what they do seriously and don't take themselves too seriously. Those to me are the most genuine, the most real people. So every day I'm trying to take what I do seriously. So I speak about whatever is inspiring me at the moment. And a couple years ago, I got into Shabbos. Now, what do I mean? I've been Shomer Shabbos my entire life. I've been Shomer Shabbos to the best of my ability my entire life. But I mean beyond the Lamed Tes Malachos. I mean not just V'shomer B'nai Yisrael Shabbos, but I mean Lasos Shabbos. What does a Shabbos table look like? What is the serenity and the joy and the passion and the fire? What is the peace of mind, the mindfulness? How can you disconnect from the world and reconnect? It'll be waiting for you there on Motzei Shabbos. Shabbos is bookended by fire. You light the candles to start Shabbos and you light Havdalah to end Shabbos. And between those fires is where we discover ourselves and what matters. We return to our roots. And there are a lot of things. So a couple of years ago, when I was in YU, just to give you a sense of, I talked about the fact that I like to draw the best from all different worlds. So when I was in YU, I used to go to New Square for Shabbos. I went for Simchas Torah 3 years in a row. I took a whole chevra. After the first time I went for Shabbos, I would always bring 9 other guys so we could daven Shacharis and the Zman, and the Rebbe knew it and he was okay with it. So 2 years ago, I decided I got to go back to Skver for Shabbos. I'm married. I got 7 kids. I got a grandson. I'm not a yeshiva bacher anymore, but I wanted that. I wanted that. I went with a good friend of mine, and we went and spent Shabbos there, and that lit me on fire for Shabbos again. lit me on fire. And I'm not saying everybody has to do this. I'm not saying you're not keeping Shabbos if you don't have a Tish Bekisha, or you don't know how to sing Ka'echso 15 times in Shabbos. I'm not saying you don't have Shabbos. But I'm talking about, do you have a Dvar Torah? Do you love Zmiros? Do you have a provocative question? Did you come with a great story? Do you know how to disconnect from the world? Do you know how to Diburcha Shel Shabbos and not Diburcha Shel Chol? V'daber Davar. Do you know how to really become a different person? One of my favorite Divrei Torah. I've said it many, many times, so anyone who's heard it will forgive me. But it comes from the Menachem Tzion, Rabbi Menachem ben Tzion Zaks, and he says, we say in Lechadodi, Pnei Shabbos Nekabla. Lechadodi Lekraskala, Pnei Shabbos Nekabla. What does it mean, Pnei Shabbos Nekabla? So a simple understanding is, we're going to greet Shabbos. Everyone turn around, look at the back door, the Shabbos Queen. Shabbos Queen is coming. Tzfas, the Mekubalim, they went out, the Shabbos Queen is coming, goes back to the time of the Gemara. But the Menachem Tzion says that's not what it means. Pnei Shabbos means, put on your Shabbos panim. All week long you walk around with a panim. It's fabissina, it's miserable, it's anxious, it's worried, it's jealous, it's arrogant, it's envious. All week long you've got this panim that's just looking down at a phone. You've got a panim that's fixated on an iPad. You've got a panim that's just looking with an ayin ra on others. Shabbos, lechadodi. Feel the muscles of your face relax. Put on your other panim. Put on a Shabbos panim. Pnei Shabbos. You have a Shabbos panim. So I spent the last couple of years trying to put on a Shabbos panim. Trying to find my Shabbos panim and to wear it for 25 hours a week. And to know that when Havdalah comes, all my problems from every Shabbos, they'll be waiting up there. All my to-do and all my tasks and all my emails and all my phone calls and everything will be waiting there. But these 25 hours, they're too important, they're too holy. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends the refuah before the Makkah. I feel like I was working on that before this period where Shabbos has taken on an even greater role, even more importance. So that to me is my mitzvah right now. I just earlier today went with my wife and got a new Kiddush cup and got a new salt, and I've been taken on again. Some would say it's shticky. I don't know if I'm going to do this for the rest of my life, but for right now, certain minhagim, certain nihugim, certain things about Shabbos that still give it a flavor and a difference. Why did I get this Tish Bekisha? So some in my community will say, you see, Goldberg's taking us to the right. Fine, that's their interpretation. But that's not why I got it. Why did I get it? Because all week long I wear a suit and tie. Practically sleep in a suit and tie. What would happen on Shabbos? I come to the dinner table, I still got the tie because I'm still going out to 3 more meetings and 4 more shiurim and I'm running. Friday night I'd come home and take my jacket and tie off and I'd sit at the table, and I was less formal to honor Shabbos than I was during the week. So I said, I want to wear something that when you walk in or when my children look to the end of the table, it's Shabbos. It's recognizable, it's identifiable. There's no confusion. It's clear. This is categorically different than the other 6 days of the week. Now I can't promise you in a week or a year I'm going to still be wearing it, and I wouldn't impose or judge anyone who doesn't wear it. And some might dismiss it as shtick, but for me it works right now. I'll tell you, not only does it work for me, so you can't just buy once. I have a few Tish Bekishes. So my biggest fear, I had 3 fears getting the Tish Bekisha the first time I wore it. Number 1 is guests. We have a very diverse community. I wasn't worried when the Kloisenberger Hasidim come over for a Suda, but I was worried the more modern segment of the community, what are they going to say? Number 2, I was worried about my mother the first time my parents came. And number 3, I was worried, we have Rav Shechter, Rebbetzin Shechter every year, and I was worried what Rebbetzin Shechter was going to say. Those are my 3 worries about this Tish Bekisha. So I got an eitzah from a dear friend. I got a few Tish Bekishas, and I always offer anyone who wants a Tish Bekisha. Most part, they don't take me up on it. But our congressman is a dear friend of mine. He's not observant. And he was over for a meal with his family, and he took me up on it. And it was geschmack, sitting at the Shabbos meal, my congressman in our Tish Bekishes, experiencing Shabbos, disconnected from the world. Whatever he's dealing with in his world, which is enormous, and I'm dealing with in my world, but it's Shabbos, it's Me'in Olam Haba. For this meal, there is nothing in the world. We're on cloud 9, it's a taste of heaven, it's amazing. So that's my mitzvah. Was that a long-winded answer?
No, that was a great answer.
I think I always thought about putting on a Tish Bekisha
Really?
sometimes. I have a brother who wears a kapata on Shabbos. When he goes to Simchas, and I always felt like, but it's easy to do in my own house. What happens when I have to go to a guest house?
No, so it's a home game rule only.
That's
my wife.
Okay.
It's a home game. When I go out, can't wear it out.
Okay,
So
I like those rules.
That's the rule. The truth is, it was a rule imposed on me, but I would secretly admit that it's a good rule. I'm pretty happy with it, because then you don't have I'm walking through the street, I'm showing up at someone else's house. Who is he? What is he doing? What is he? It's a home. When I'm home, in my comfort of my home, that's my thing.
We like to ask all our guests this question now. Nachi actually purchased the time machine. He took all the money from Meaningful Minute and he bought a time machine.
90% of the things that Yaakov says is a joke.
So you got a time
this
machine.
This is part of the 10%. Go.
And we're going to let you go in the time machine.
Yeah.
You could go back and spend 1 hour with anyone in history who's no longer with us. Who would you meet?
Who would I meet? So every year in our sukkah, we ask that question. When
Really?
We recite the Ushpizin. And then we go around and we say, if you could add on to the Ushpiz, and if you could have a guest in the sukkah, who would it be? That's fascinating. We change the rules every year. It has to be among the living, it can't be among the living, has to be related to you, can't be related to you. And it's a great, great question. And I'll answer similarly to the last question is, it always changes. I could read a biography of the Lubavitcher Rebbe and say, I would love to spend time with the Rebbe. I read all about Menachem Begin. If Israel had Menachem Begin's leadership today. So, Piazetz and the Rebbe, who wouldn't want to spend time with the Piazetz and the Rebbe? Who shouldn't only be known, the Eish Kodesh, by, of course, the Warsaw Ghetto and the end of his life, and Hashem Yikom Damo, being murdered by the Nazis and all that he lost. His introduction to Chovas HaTalmidim, what he taught us about Jewish education and inspiring the youth long before he knew or saw what was coming, but also how he as a leader did what he did within that worst place. How could you project optimism and faith in a place that he was? So because that's not Rebbe, that's not my answer. Maybe Rav Teichtal, the author of the Ema Banu Smecha, who grew up in a Hungarian background and who grew up in an anti-Zionist background, and then also in the camps with no svarim available, writes Ema Banu Smecha, says we got it all wrong. Tzion Eretz Yisrael, it's where we got to go, it's where we belong also.
You said maybe.
Maybe,
I don't think
but
that's
he's
your
not.
answer either.
Yeah, but he's not. I'll tell you who I would love to spend time with is Rav Meir Shapiro. And I'll tell you why I want to spend time with Rav Meir Shapiro. I can't believe what he accomplished. He died relatively young age. And of course we know he was the Rosh Yeshiva Chachmei Lublin. You know what you need to know about Peh to get into Yeshivas Chachmei Lublin?
No.
He was an enormous Talmid Chacham. Yeshivas Chachmei Lublin, it was not the mere 8,000, it wasn't BMG 8,000 Talmidim. It was a couple hundred Talmidim. You had a Faher, and you had to know hundreds of Black Gemara, Baal Peh, and he was the Rosh Yeshiva of that yeshiva. At the same time that he was also on the Moetzes and part of the leadership of Aguda. And here's the amazing part. Do you know he was a member of the Polish parliament? It was the equivalent of being a Rosh Yeshiva, a Rav, a congressman, the head of an Askan, a head of a communal organization, all at the same time. How in the world did he manage that? How did he balance that? How was he a husband? How did he do all that? What did he go through? What gave him chizuk? What were his challenges?
Daf Yomi, right?
And introducing Daf Yomi changed the world.
The things you mentioned sound like, okay, that's his thing, and you didn't even say Daf
Yomi.
Right. And like 80,000 people packing into a stadium, part of what he implemented.
Yeah, today's the last, I don't know when this will appear, but today's the last day of Masechah Shabbos. Tomorrow starts Eruvin. Yeah. I know that the OUs know all Daf did not see a drop-off from Brachos, which usually do Brachos Shabbos.
Right?
So an increase, which is amazing.
Yeah.
The Talmud Torah that he has a schus, that Rav Shapiro has a schus for, just unimaginable. And I didn't even list it because to me, it was a great idea he had. He introduced it. There was opposition to it. He got it through. Okay, that's on the list. That's on the resume. But these were the other full-time positions that he did all the time. And he balanced it and juggled it and got it all done.
Isn't that interesting, though? Like he had like this one idea. And if you mention the name of Meir Shapiro, I think a lot of people would say Daf Yomi.
Yep. They don't know the other parts.
One idea. This guy was in, like you mentioned, the parliament and his yeshiva and everything.
This guy, Nachi? I'm saying.
Meir Shapiro.
Meir Shapiro.
This Hillel
Yeshivas Chachmei Lublin, he also transformed the way we have yeshivas today. Before his time, yeshivas were decrepit, Beis Medrash was a hole in the wall, the Bachram didn't have any place to stay, they had to sleep in some Balabayas' house and eat teg and beg for meals. And he said, no. And he built. Have you been to Poland? Have you been to...
I've been there.
So if you've been to Lublin, you can see it had been transformed to medical school and it was brought back by the Jewish community. It's like yeshiva today. The Beis Medrash was put back together. And he built a magnificent yeshiva, one of the first with a dormitory and a cafeteria. And he re-punctuated the mission of Pirkei Avos. He said, Pas b'melech tochal. Kachi darcho shel Torah. The classic way is pas melach tochal. Yeshiva bacher, just bread and salt. That's it. He said, no, pas melach tochal. A yeshiva bacher, chas v'shalom, should be so low. No, we have to hold them high. This should have a dormitory and a cafeteria and a meal plan. And many of the yeshivas that we know today, it began. He introduced that to us. He introduced it.
We have a question from your daughter's friend. Yeah. And we're going to play it. What? You asked it right. Really?
What was the question?
She asked about, did you always want to be around?
Oh.
Was that, of such a big community? That's what she was asking.
Okay, so I'm going to twist the question a little.
Sure.
Your daughter just mentioned that the question was asked in some capacity. So if you could change your community to be smaller so you could have more what to do with, be really close with 50 people, would you do that? Would you want that?
Hopefully his community's not listening.
No. They
No,
can
I
be
want them
listening. I struggle with that. I think about that at times. I'd love to give you the noble answer that no, I want to impact the most people, but probably my ego's involved. If I'm having a moment of honesty, is that I'm a competitive person, I'm an ambitious person, and I want to try to have the biggest impact I can. I hope that it's confidence, not arrogance. I hope that it's trying to do it with a sense of humility. I work on that and I struggle with it. And I think anyone who's in a position of leadership, who's honest with themselves, some of your past guests, I won't say their names because we talked about this on Behind the Bima with Charlie. I asked Charlie because, Charlie and I are friends. We also go way back and we've talked about that on several occasions. On the one hand, you're in yeshiva. I'm going to take a detour and come back to your question.
Sure.
When you're in yeshiva, you learn all about anivos and humility, and you don't have to be the center of attention. You don't have to be the loudest person in the room, and you just blend in, and you work on yourself in midos, and you're learning shari tshuv, mesilas yesharim, orchos tzadikim, al yeshur, over and over and over again. Then you get into our world, and you're like, I want to get invited, I want to get posted, I want to get follows, I want listeners, I want to be able to downloads, and we're in an industry, so to say, that we don't measure by profit margin. We don't measure by revenue. We measure by impact. Hopefully we're sharing Hashem's Torah. That's why we're here. It's why He put us on this earth. It's what He gave us the talents to try to be able to do. So how does that shtim? How do you make that work with, anivos on the one hand, the modesty, and on the other hand, how do you promote in a sense? So, it's important to be a connector, not a promoter. The Torah and Hashem are the brand, not us or our name or our ego. It's challenging, but anyone who stops struggling with that has lost. As long as you're still struggling with it, I think that you're doing okay.
Struggle's winning. Yeah.
Struggle's winning, and as of now, I'm still struggling with it. But if I'm honest with myself and you and whoever else is listening to this, then probably I couldn't be satisfied with a small shul, even if I got to know everyone. I have a dear friend who's a Rav. He's a Chabad rabbi out in Spokane, Washington. His name is Rabbi Han. His grandparents lived in our community, and I knew him for a long time. When he first got that assignment, you know how many Jews are in Spokane, Washington? Not Seattle, Washington, Spokane, Washington. It's like the farthest distance in the United States of America between Boca Raton, Florida, and Spokane, Washington. And there are something like, 1,500 Jews. Not families, Jews. Mm. So I said to him, when he first got the assignment, he was so excited. He's like, I've been on a waiting list. I've been waiting to find out where I'm going. I'm like, really? Like someone else got Boca, someone got Maui, someone got like Costa Rica, someone got wherever, someone the Chabad of the 5 towns, and like you got Spokane, Washington. And
could have been worse.
Could have been worse. Yeah. But they buy a one-way ticket.
Yeah.
They're going out there. That's it. They buy a one-way ticket and they buy a grave wherever they're assigned. And his joy, his excitement. So I once said to him basically, like, he's a very talented person. I wrote about this. He said, don't you have an itch? Don't you have a yearning? Don't you have a desire, ambition to bring your talents somewhere else? So he said to me, no, actually, I feel bad for you. I said, what do you mean? I said, I speak to more people in my Hashkama minyan than you speak to, Rosh Hashanah the whole year. So he says, because I know every Jew in my city. You barely know every Jew in your shul. He says, every Rosh Hashanah I deliver a honey cake to every Jew in my city. Every Hanukkah I give a menorah. Every Pesach I give matzah to every single Jew in Spokane, Washington. So there are people cut out for that. They are enormously special. We should all be deeply indebted to them. They're taking care of our brothers and sisters, Hashem's other children, wherever they are. And we should be grateful we don't have to do it. Right. But I don't think that, I don't know if my ambition would be satisfied with it. So I'd love to try to find solutions of how to connect deeper and more meaningfully and with more people, even within the model that we have, the middle class. I'm going to write an article one day about it, but I don't want to call attention to it, which will draw criticism of, Rabbi, you could call more, you could reach out more, you could. What I tell people all the time is, I say, reach out to me. Whenever anyone says, can we have coffee, can we meet for lunch? I'm so excited about it, and I love learning about them. And it doesn't have to take a crisis. It could be for no reason at all other than I want a relationship. And I say it's very hard for me to proactively do that just because of the volume of people that we have. But to everyone who does it, I respond because I crave that. I love that. To me, it's real. I could sit with people and talk to people forever. So I wouldn't change that. I wouldn't change it. I love having this. And another one of our mottos or slogans is that the best is yet to come. We're just beginning. We're just getting started. In fact, right before Corona hit, we were unveiling a major campus expansion, a huge plan to double the size of our campus and create a lot more of a footprint and to do more. I had mixed feelings about it because I told you I want to be in Israel one day. But Rav Shechter reassured me. He said, the Gemara Megillah says that Asid and Bate Knessia Shebebavel, the shuls outside of Israel, one day when Mashiach comes, they're going to lift up and they're going to be brought to Israel. So the more beautiful you make the campus here, it will be beautiful when it's brought to Israel. That made me feel better. We went ahead with the campaign and Corona struck. But I really believe we're at 900 families. Let me tell you this. I don't know how much time we have, but let me tell you, Palm Beach County, where we are, people don't know these statistics. South Palm Beach County, which is just Boca Raton and Delray, but really Boca, has 130,000 Jews.
Wow.
Palm Beach County is 250,000 Jews. And South Florida, which is Palm Beach County, Broward County, and Miami-Dade County, has more Jews than in California, than in LA. So South Florida is an enormous Jewish community. That's the good news. Here's the really bad news. Only 8% of that Jewish community identify. Forget Shomer Shabbos, Torah Mitzvahs. Identify with the Jewish community.
Wow.
That means to say, if you work out at the JCC, you're part of the 8%. So 92% of that astronomical number, 50% of the homes in Boca are Jewish. 50% of the homes, every other house in Boca Raton is Jewish. And overwhelmingly, they have nothing to do with their Judaism. They know nothing about their Jewish background. They observe nothing in their Judaism. They have no connection to Israel, no connection to Torah. It's tragic. It's tragic. So that drives me and it drives us, and it's what we're all about. So 900 families, I want to get to 10,000 families. And if 9,000 of them are not Shomer Shabbos yet, they're driving to shul, that's a win. They're on their way. Maybe their children are going to marry Jewish. Maybe they're going to begin a path of keeping Torah and mitzvos. That's a win. The assimilation of what we're doing to ourselves is worse than any of our enemies in all of history tried to do. When I was young, I just come back from my 2 years in Karem B'Yavneh. After my first year in YU, I went back for a summer to Israel and I worked at Aish. I went with a dear friend of mine, Avi Pollack, who's now at Camp Pask. And we went to Aish. We were madrichim on the Discovery program for the summer. So we were Yeshiva Bachrim. I was a kanai. I was really stark and firm at that time. And they said, you got to go recruit people. At the time, people had an attention span. So Discovery was 2.5 days. Now Discovery is 2.5 hours. People can't last longer than that. So go recruit people. You know, the backpacker, that lost soul, someone who's looking to discover themselves. So where do you go to do that? You go to the kotel. You got to pull the people off the wall. You got to find at the kotel. Where else would you go to do that? Back in the day, go to Ben Yehuda. So we looked at them, we're like, Ben Yehuda, I'm a yeshiva guy. Ben Yehuda, Pritzas, Ben Yehuda. I said, no problem. Come, we have a meeting for you. And they took us for a meeting with Rav Noach Weinberg, that's all. And I'll never forget, Rav Noach Weinberg looked at me and he said the following. He said, let me ask you a question. If the train were headed to Auschwitz and a woman extended her hand for you to pull her off, would you say, I'm a yeshiva bacher, I'm a starker, are you talking about I'm a ben Torah? Or would you grab her hand and pull her off? Because he said, make no mistake, the trains are going to Auschwitz and they're packed with more people and they're going even faster. Assimilation, intermarriage, the disappearance of our people, it's happening. So you got to pull people off. You got to find them where they are. And that's exactly what we did. That was a great summer. We came up with all kinds of creative ways of trying to engage people and pull them off the wall or out of Ben Yehuda and get them to give 2.5 days of their life to discover, to go on a discovery seminar. But I'll never forget what Rav Noach said. It changed my life. And that's a responsibility we have. So in our community, in our shul, that's another part of what informs who we are. It's part of, again, who I am, is to see ourselves as living in concentric circles. I'm a Frum Yid, I'm a Ben Torah. At the core of who I am, at the center of the main circle, is who we are as a community, a Frum community. But there's another bigger circle around. It's called the Jewish community. It's called the Jewish people. And it's called caring about them. It's called being makari of them. It's called sharing the special thing we have with them. It's called noticing them. And then outside that, there's another circle called humanity, that all people are created. Chaviv Adam shenever b'tzelem. It doesn't say Chaviv Yisrael. It says Chaviv Adam. All people have B'tzelem Elokim. Kadosh Baruch Hu loves all of his children, all of humanity. So yeah, at the center is my family, which is my community, my Torah community. And then there's my extended family, which is Klal Yisrael. And there's an extended family, which is all of humanity, and caring about that and interacting and trying to be on a mission to make a difference in all of those worlds.
Well, Rabbi Efrem Goldberg, I hope one day Nachi and I are in your home for Shabbos,
Absolutely.
wearing one of your us wearing your bekashas.
Can't wait.
I'll
for a
take you
meal.
on that. Yeah.
I can't wait.
And it was a real pleasure to meet you. Finally meet you. You should know a lot of people have reached out for us to have you on the show.
I appreciate that.
So thank you for finally coming in.
No, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And Mazel Tov, and just more.
Thank you. And Yesher Koach to both of you. And I said it already, but it's really special what you've created and what you're doing and how you're doing it. And I think it's a very big lesson because you're both doing it with drive and ambition. You're not doing it because you have these big batei medrash and big shtender from which you give drushes and big rabbinic titles and big platforms in that sense. And I think it's a message to people who you want to light the world on fire, you want to illuminate the darkness, you have an idea, run with it, do it, and tens of thousands of people's lives can be changed as a result. So you guys are an inspiration to so many, and I really appreciate you having me on.
Thank you. That means the world to us. Thank you. That was a very enjoyable time for me. How about for you?
Me as well. Really enjoyed that sit down, that conversation. To learn more, to get in touch, for everything Rabbi Efrem Goldberg, the person who you just listened to talk for the last hour and change, head to RabbiEfremGoldberg.com. If you need help with spelling, just try it in Google and I'm sure you'll find it.
It's so interesting because just nothing to do with our conversation. I have so many friends who are always like, should we just move to Boca?
Everyone says, Boca is the number one place where people say, should we move there?
Yeah.
And they're seeing a lot of success. A lot of people are moving to Boca Raton.
I just think it's crazy, like living in New York, New Jersey these days. Certain areas, it's just so expensive.
So if you want to go ahead and make that move, just head to RabbiEfremGoldberg.com or you can move without going to his website. But anyways, we hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll be seeing you in just a few weeks because when we release this episode, Rosh Hashanah Sukkot is following.
Yeah.
So we'll be seeing you guys shortly. And once again, AMR, if you can help us out, Yaakov's got a little sniffles. 848-222-1110, guys, if you want to reach them. And dailygiving.org. If you haven't signed up already,
sign up.
Head to the website. Takes 2 seconds.
Do it. And guys, remember to always say Moda'ani when you wake up.
It's beautiful. Ciao.